Hey, manufacturing world. Welcome to another episode of Shop Matters, sponsored by Okuma America. And once again, we are recording live from the IMTS booth here at IMTS 2022 in Chicago. So this has been an exciting time here. We are in day 3, and I am just overwhelmed at the crowd and the response we've had at the show so far. So joining me here in the booth today, I've got James Cooper from FANUC America. He is the general manager and of general sales and execution. So welcome, James.
Thanks, Wade. It's great to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you taking the time.
Chance to talk with you today.
Yeah, so give us a little background. How long have you been in automation and the robotics industry?
Sure. So I started in automation almost 40 years ago, actually in high school, and as a high school co-op, working for an automation company. And then that led, as I was going to college, into actually getting hired into what at that time was GMF Robotics back in the mid-'80s. So I've been in robotics and automation my entire life.
No kidding.
Going back into high school, which is kind of rare.
Have you been tied to the robotics side and tied into machine tool industry primarily, or have you been in a lot of different segments of that robotic automation side?
Yeah, so I've been in I guess the better way for me to answer that is I've always been involved in the non-automotive side of the robotics and automation industry. Okay. So always in machine tending, picking, packing, palletizing. But for the customers, the consumer product customers, the oil and gas customers, it really never automotive or automotive component, which is kind of rare, or I guess maybe odd a little bit. Being in robotics that long and starting in the Detroit area, you'd think you'd be, heavy into automotive, and in my career just never have been. Right.
So obviously, IMTS 2022 has been extremely popular. We've had a great crowd for the last 3 days. Yeah. I know I've walked by the FANUC booth. You guys have been just massively exploded with a lot of people. What is the major differences that you've seen or conversations that you've had with customers that's been different this year versus 4 or maybe even 6 years ago?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, Wade. It really is amazing how crowded the show is, and it's certainly great to be back at a show and back with people again. Your booth is packed right now. Our booth is absolutely packed right now, and it has been crowded every day of this show. Record number of leads, great conversations with customers. But I think the thing that we're maybe seeing a little bit different this year than 4 years ago, 6 years ago, is what's driving some of these discussions. And many of our customers and prospects coming into the show here this year are all they're talking about is their labor challenge, that they can't find people, that their need to drive for automation is to be able to produce product, because they can't get product out the door because they can't find people. I know I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I was speaking with a customer yesterday. He needs 200 people. Their company is posting for 200 people for their manufacturing operation, and they can't find them.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
So, and that's a common theme,
absolutely.
Geographically, and no matter what market segment you're serving in manufacturing, that's a common theme of being able not to, or being challenged by the workforce segment.
Yeah, exactly. And that really carries across all industries. Was at a woodworking show a few weeks ago. Same challenge, can't find people. We do a lot in food and consumer packaged goods. Exact same thing. They can't find people. So they can't run their production lines. They can't produce product.
Okay.
So that's that is the driving theme this year.
So what new products, what's the new sizzle factor? If we walk into the FANUC booth right now, what's the new things that you want to make sure everybody knows about and sees?
Yeah, so this year we're showing a greatly expanded offering in our collaborative robots, larger collaborative robots, smaller collaborative robots. We're also introducing new vision technology and also a continuation of ease of tools to make robots and solutions easier to deploy and easier for customers to self-integrate. We have many customers now who are looking to what we call do-it-yourself, DIY, where for many years customers would go to systems integrators, and they still do that. But for some of the smaller organizations, we find a lot more customers who are just wanting to do it themselves. And so we've been working the last few years on developing tools to enable that, to make it easier for them to be able to do that.
Okay. I've seen an explosion in the prepackaged solutions. So when you walk into the Okuma booth, one of the first machines that you see is a grinder. We have a GA26 with an automation within reach, load and go. So that's a prepackaged automation solution that's got a FANUC robot on it. And that's something that's deployable. It can be moved from machine to machine. But I understand one of the things that you guys have come out with more recently is actually using vision in a different scenario to kind of self-teach and touch up points when you move robots, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, Wade. That we're seeing as well what we call pre-engineered solutions, and customers looking for an easily to deploy, a quick to deploy solution that is not highly complex, that they can move around from lathe to lathe as their production needs change. And there's many things with some of our newer technology that makes that easier to do. First, with collaborative robots, you're typically not needing safety fencing, so that makes it easier to move around. They're lighter weight. Our newer collaborative robots we introduced are single-phase power, so you're not needing to drop three-phase power. But also, to your point about the vision technology, we have in our booth an example of a portable lathe tending cell that, by using our integrated vision, instead of needing to wheel that cell up to the machine and find some docking points and recalibrate it to its home position, it uses the vision and just looks at a badge on the machine. And it's actually a QR code. It looks at it, and it figures out its position from there. And then when the robot goes into the machine to load and unload the chuck, it actually uses the sensing capability of the robot to find that normal home position of that center of the chuck, so that you don't have to reteach that. So it makes it really easy to be able to move a cell from machine to machine as production needs change. And say not just move it amongst lathes, you could move it from a lathe to a vertical. It's really flexible to be able to do that.
Oh, no, that's interesting. I've never thought about that. So you can move it from a lathe to a vertical machining center, and it'll pick up from the QR code and change its orientation.
Yes.
And then using the force sensing technology in your wrist, be able to touch up the centering on it.
Yeah, and then we have another cell in our booth that similar concept, but there we're actually moving the robot on an AMR, automatic mobile robot. So when we talk about portability of the cells, what I was referring to first would be where a human would move the cell. We also have another display where we're actually using a mobile robot to move the robot from machine to secondary processes.
Yeah. So that's something I've used the term AGV for a long time, but I noticed the AMR is more the way I should be describing that.
That's the current way they're referred to.
That's an area of the industry that I'm excited to see, because I think that's where the collaborative side, I've had a hard time really calibrating my mind on where does the collaborative robot fit in production machining type environments. You know, I'm standing here looking at one of our Standroid machines.
Yes.
That's an industrial robot that is in high volume production. That's a fast-paced robot. Most collaborative robots I see are a little slower paced, and so I always worry about that. Is there a trade-off on that? But then when I think of the AMR, that collaborative robot on an AMR, that replicates a lot of what I would be doing as a manual operator, changing tools, doing maintenance routines, things of that nature.
Yeah, Wade, you hit it right on the head. What you really have to look at when you look at a traditional industrial robot versus a collaborative robot, and that is the throughput speed. Collaborative robots, by nature of being collaborative and being safe to operate, have to move slow. So if throughput and yield is your prime objective, that may not be the way to go, because that's how we're looking at, across the booth from us here. That robot's going to operate at a much higher speed, so your throughput's going to be much higher. So that that's one of the first things we look at when we're talking to customers when they say, "Well, I want a collaborative robot." We try to understand what's driving that. And for most customers, they want a fenceless solution, or there's the perception that they're easier and simpler to deploy. They are easier and simpler to deploy, and sometimes that's because of more payload and reach limitations and speed limitations. You're also limited more in what you can do with them. So that sometimes just drives them to be a simpler choice.
Right. Okay.
But absolutely, your throughput requirements is one of the number one things we look at, and then also absolute requirement is what are you wanting to do with the robot, and can it be done safely? Because every robot application requires a safety risk assessment, but certainly collaborative. Absolutely, you have to make sure that it's a safe work environment for the people in the plant.
Okay. So to wrap up our discussion for today, give me what would be your top 3 pieces of advice if somebody is new to automation and they're taking a current process that they're looking at and they want to integrate automation to it. What would be your top 3 pieces of advice that you would want people to think through as they're going down that journey?
Yes, that's a great question, Ray. And we have this discussion a lot with our customers. The first thing we talk to our customers about is when we come in and look at their facility. Sometimes customers want to start on the most difficult application. We want to start on the easiest, because getting user adoption is important and making sure the project's a success. And so we always talk about there's no reason to take on a science project. And so there's typically what we find, and especially for the applications that you would find at IMTS, is there are many simple applications. So that's kind of the first thing is what are the applications? What are they trying to achieve? What is driving them to have a desire for automation? The second thing, especially in a machine tending application, is are they looking to do it themselves? Is there thought of using a pre-engineered solution, or do we need to look at bringing in one of our many systems integrators who do a fantastic job? I know you know the system integrator market. There's many or some that Okuma has worked with for years and do a fantastic job integrating and deploying robots. So that's kind of the second step of that. And then the third is, while the technology has become very simple, it still is, the customers still need to look at how they're going to support it and making sure they have the right staff. And I mentioned also earlier our education group, where we go out and work with schools across the country. We're in over 1,500 schools, high schools, vocational schools, technical colleges, with robotics certification programs. So we're creating an access stream for our end customers to get students and talent who know robotics and automation, but also to give a great career opportunity, great career path for the students going through those programs. There's such strong demand right now for these kids or older than kids who are going through these programs.
Right, that can lead to a whole new career adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic.
We've got many success stories and examples out there people who've gone through these programs and started at the high school level, moved into a 2-year program or tech ed program, and ended up with a very rewarding career in companies with robotics and automation.
Great. James, thank you for joining us here today. We really appreciate the partnership that we have with FANUC and all that you do for us. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you, Wade. We very much appreciate it, and have a great rest of the show.
All right. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.